Hey guys, so recently I've been conducting research on a particular issue that I feel is an incredible amount of importance right now, but it isn't really getting the media attention or attention in general that it deserves. Childhood obesity. Particularly how food advertising and marketing in particular actually has an influence on childhood obesity rates. According to the American Heart Association, about 1 in 3 American children and teens are overweight or obese. Obesity rates more than tripled in between the years 1971 and 2011 and has quickly risen to one of the largest public health concerns in United States history. The Alliance for a Healthy Generation says that of the 10 states with the highest obesity rates, 9 of those are some of the poorest in the country. They also say that there can be multiple factors contributing to the rising obesity rates. Television and media, marketing of unhealthy foods, limited access to affordable foods, lack of daily physical activity, increased portion sizes, and a much higher consumption of sugary beverages. There is enough sugary beverages being consumed by children and adolescents now to be equivalent with the caloric and value of an entire 4th meal a day. Let's define what it means to be an obese child. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention defines obesity as having excess body fat. In order to measure whether someone's overweight, doctors use what's called a BMI, or a body mass index. They look kind of like this. The BMI system checks to see if a person's weight falls into a satisfactory range for the average person of their similar body height, sex, and age. But are there any problems with that? Absolutely. Most scientists don't really think that BMI can get accurate fat percentages estimations like most people would think. According to an article from NPR titled "The Top 10 Reasons Why BMI is Bogus" by the Weekend Edition podcast, the BMI should have been thrown out years ago and replaced with something much more accurate. If you'd like to read or listen to more on that, I'll put a link down in the description below for the NPR podcast. Now, on to how food advertising and media weighs in on the childhood obesity epidemic. There's a book called Media and Youth, A Developmental Perspective. It's written by Stephen Kirsch and explores how media might influence the developmental patterns of kind of the youth of society. Kirsch states that there are 3 main ways that media consumption can weigh in on the obesity epidemic. Number 1 is sedentary behavior displacing physical activity. While there is some kind of link in studies that show that media can displace physical activity, it's not significant enough to cause child obesity on its own. Reason number 2 is the intake of nutritionally poor foods primarily when using media. I mean, think about it. Someone's always got chips or candy or a soda to accompany that. So it's very possible that media is linked to these unhealthy foods, and that could be a very root cause of the problem. And then the third one is that advertisements for food in particular lead to poor eating habits in children and adolescents. Product placement in internet advertising is one of the most influential forms of advertising recently, or in recent years. Food companies set up interactive websites in order to bring the youth in with fun or interactive games or activities that'll promote their food products, even though those kids might not even necessarily know that they're being persuaded to enjoy that food more. According to the American Psychological Association, most children that are age 6 or under can't distinguish a television ad from their own TV programming. They use the same language in TV advertisements that they might use in actual programming for these young kids. The APA also found out that children also have a really wonderful memory and are great at recognizing food that they see on TV in the store shelves. This is most likely because they associate that food with their favorite TV show. Children are going to be able to see those foods in the grocery store and ask for them by name or just by picking out the color, the character on the box. That kind of influences parent decisions to buy those foods for their children, even though the parents might know that it's not the healthiest option. Another study by the APA shows that almost 50% of all advertising that comes up during children's programming is for food products or food-related products. Most of them are for kind of sugary cereals or non-nutritious food sources. So there's this book called Children, Adolescents, and Media. It actually states that American children end up viewing an estimated of 40,000 advertisements across various media platforms every single year. Keep in mind that half those ads are for foods that are lacking in nutritional value. This is especially true of sugary cereals and high-calorie snacks. Food advertising focusing on children began around the 1960s, and by the 2000s, it has grown tremendously. The food advertising industry spends almost $2 billion a year on food advertisements that specifically target children and young adults. According to a study by this lady named Mary Story and this other lady named Simone French called Food Advertising and Marketing Directed at Children and Adolescents in the United States, the U.S. food system is the second largest advertiser in the American economy and is the leading buyer of television, newspaper, magazine, internet, and radio advertisements. The food market captures 12.5% of U.S. consumer spending, so there's vigorous competition. Food is a repeat purchase item as well. A repeat purchase item is something that people have to have. Food is also one of the most highly branded items. What's the big deal? Like, why is this a problem? The fact of the matter is that of the 20,000 advertisements that children might see per year, healthy foods are advertised almost 3% of the time. So PSAs are public service announcements about nutrition and health, as well as ads for food to provide adequate nutrients for people that age just aren't out there. They don't exist. This has to change. Children need to be educated on how to keep a balanced diet and active lifestyle. In middle and high school, we are required to take some sort of health or physical education class. It's very possible that in these health classes, we learn so much about sexual health and kind of drugs and alcohol abuse that takes away from us learning about nutrition. It's alarming that there's such a lack of information going out about such a basic necessity, eating. This is especially true because eating behaviors can track through your childhood into your adult life. This comes down to one thing, really. Children and adolescents just aren't being educated and getting the information that they need to develop healthy eating patterns. That's not to say that people haven't tried. The Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, signed into law by Barack Obama, funded child nutrition programs and public service announcements, as well as provided free lunch programs in schools for 5 years. Michelle Obama traveled the country promoting this program, trying to get children as well as parents on board with it. But there was one problem. The big food companies that have all the money are able to pay for more spots. This means that while there were public service announcements in rotation, they just weren't seen frequently enough. The good news is, recently there's been a cultural shift towards kind of the uncovering of what some people might call the truth in this food advertising frenzy. Some examples of this are Fast Food Nation, The Omnivore's Dilemma, and the documentary Superside Me, written by Eric Schlosser, Michael Pollan, and directed by Morgan Spurlock. That's kind of it, really. It's a really big problem to fix. But I feel like what we have to start with is figuring out what's important to us. Do we want the corporations to tell us how to eat and what to eat? And, that possibly having severe health effects for our children later on in life? Or would we rather have those opinions for ourselves and figure out what we want to eat and what is best for us? That's kind of it for me. I just think this is a really important issue that needs to be addressed. And it's sad that it's been in the news and media for so long with no real solution or no one really trying to make a difference in it. Thank you guys for watching.